Hi everybody, my name's Teresa, and I just wanted to do something a little different this module, and Dr. Anderson has been gracious enough to give us some freedom, so I decided to record myself and talk a little bit instead of writing, which I still did write, but anyway, Module 2, Historical and Contemporary Perspectives. So I picked three things, one historical, one philosophical, or kind of two, and one cultural event, which was also historical, but that I think led to education in the United States and kind of the connections between them that I just saw. I did go through the timeline that Dr. Anderson gave us and felt that it was good as far as the section on American education system, but that it was kind of abruptly ended, so to speak. Let me move myself up here a little bit. So, first I had the idea of the 1920s, the Roaring '20s, this age of economic prosperity. I was inspired by Dr. Anderson's story, I think in Module 1, or a brief introduction about his grandma who was a teacher in the late 1910s, and kind of what she would think if she saw him now, as far as curriculum and what she did in the teaching realm then. I was inspired a little bit. I've always kind of been intrigued by this decade. My great-grandparents, though education was not something that was really high on their priority list in the sense of going to school. Most of them did not go past 8th grade. They did well for themselves during Prohibition and channeled that extra money and income into farm ground. So though they didn't have a traditional education, they did utilize their street or world education. But I felt like that age, the 20s, was just economic prosperity, extra ideas on education. Women gained the right to vote, so we start to make advances there. Lots of just extra time to do deeper thinking on learning and life's purpose. You know, we've seen those kind of cycles throughout history, which I feel like led to, as I read about the philosophical philosophies in education, perennialism and essentialism, I feel like kind of are in a battle with each other around this time frame as well. So we're trying to decide if we want to cultivate intellect or be like systematic and disciplined, and we're still kind of battling that a little bit. We also obviously have the other theories that are making their way to the forefront, you know, in a few decades later. But I just thought it was interesting how these connect to about that time frame. Especially in America, that's really when education, I feel, is starting to come to the forefront and be definitely more accessible than it ever was before. Then I have like Olga Kansan's Brown versus Board of Education and the Civil Rights Movement. So we have the historical component, but we also have this cultural, societal thing going on. So this was really that barrier breakdown, true education for all. The Department of Education is who I cited here, the 2020, and they say that Civil Rights Movement really led the way for removal of barriers for race, gender, disability, and age. They have several resources. You can go look at the statistics of once those barriers were removed, how the education and statistics went up in those demographics. And lastly, that quote there, in the field of public education, the doctrine of separate but equal has no place. And I feel like we've really gotten there as far as education, history ideas, and now just how to incorporate all that within curriculum, remaining not so separate and becoming a little more equal. So after reading Jacob's text, chapter 2 and chapter 3, I had just a few points. Overall, I think Jacob's, most of us can agree with a lot of things that she says. Even if this book is 10 years old, it just is, it doesn't feel like much has changed in 10 years, except for what COVID has thrown in the mix. And I am a first-year teacher, so correct me if I am wrong down the road for any of you who are definitely the veterans over me. I thought it was a couple points that I agreed with. Educators just want to do it right. At least everyone I've been around, they just want to do things right. And we're frustrated because it's seems like time is our enemy and we can't quite get there. And that led into teachers are more likely to rejuvenate their curriculum if they know they have dedicated time. And I thought these were two very true, clear, concise points. I kind of disagree a little bit with some of her thoughts on 21st century skills and thinking, critical thinking. We use that term all the time, but do our students really understand what it means? How are we teaching it to them? Can it be taught? Sometimes I think that it is just intrinsic, but maybe that's more the term common sense. She makes this quote later here where it says, to make 21st century skills meaningful to specific learners. So I'm not sure what specific learners she was referring to. The key is to translate those skills into highly discrete classroom applications. And I'm just not sure why we have to be discrete about some of these things. Interestingly enough, I had just spoken to my mentor teacher, because I'm getting ready to interview him, about curriculum coming up in our Module 4, and he went on kind of a tangent about this modeling idea. So I had that thought as well when I was reading some of this. Are we modeling these 21st century skills? We can't expect students to learn them if we're not modeling them. So I had to, of course, go to the website and look that up. And these were the 21st century 21st century skills that I wonder how well we are modeling. I know I definitely can do a better job, but how can we expect our learners to pick these up if we don't model critical thinking, communication, collaboration, creativity, career skills, etc.? And that kind of ties back into that teachers need the time. We need the time to think about how we're going to incorporate these things, make sure that we feel comfortable in our skill level of these things. So I particularly focused in on collaboration. In the workplace, collaboration is key. It's vital. It's something, no matter what field you go into, you're going to need. So I keep kind of rolling back to this idea of why we are still assessing individual performance consistently, because a lot of things in the workplace are team, group, based performance, and companies and projects require that over individual work often. And though we give group projects, are we truly incorporating collaboration just by giving one or two projects here or there? So that kind of ties into some of Jacob's earlier text, but is just food for thought. And I just put this graphic up here. Most of you have probably already seen it, but I just wanted to throw that back out there so you actually know what she's referring to. This came directly from the website she addressed, 21stcenturyskills.org. So as we segue into Chapter 3, we look deeper into curriculum. And I chose science because I'm a secondary or high school science teacher. And Jacobs refers to scientists or skills that they might need, but says scientists are curious, inquisitive, focused, skeptical, creative, and observant. So we want our students to have this, which these skills apply outside of science as well, but we also want them to have all those 21st century skills from the previous slide. We want them to have a lot, which is good. That is good, that we have good, high expectations. So I just thought some applications that would be worthwhile or worthy of looking at were real-world applications in career and work. And these are things that, for sure, I'm not reinventing the wheel, but career and work applications, they need these things to be successful in medicine, lab research, engineering, even just cable installation. They need to be a problem solver. They need to know how to get through in time limits and customer satisfaction or safety checks in tight situations, be developed, driven, have solutions, be clear and concise in their communications. So there's lots of skills that we want them to learn, and how we develop the curriculum needs to focus, I think, around these real-world skills and applications and career things that they might be needing, at least from the science perspective. And then lastly here, my perspective on Marzano's text, which was like, wow, yeah, finally somebody is kind of saying what I'm saying. And again, I'm new to the profession and to education system in general, so it felt like I agreed with a lot of his text, and these were things I'd seen, but I just didn't maybe have the data to back it up. But noteworthy things I thought were point-wise that there's intended curriculum, implemented curriculum, and attained curriculum. I totally get that, and I totally see that. I was definitely one of those people who believed there was just a standard plan that everybody taught to, and I was definitely misled and actually was kind of thrown into a larger district that doesn't really seem to have one, at least for the subjects I'm teaching when it comes to science. They just told me follow the standards. Well, the national standards do exactly what he says later, that there are maybe a small number of benchmarks or a small number of standards, but they have lots of instructional concepts embedded in them. So I totally agree with that. I thought seeing the numbers in the math for how many hours a student will actually receive instruction was clear and definitive and really helpful into how we can incorporate those instructional concepts, the large number of them, and recognizing that class time is sacred, and really thought what other countries do as far as the topics, like in their textbook, seems like they have fewer topics and they go more for depth over breadth. And I was advised that, at least in COVID right now, from my administrator, to pick 5 topics and just make sure I did them well. I won't lie, though, when you look at the standards, it's hard to feel like you're achieving what my job is, which is supposed to be teaching all those standards and all those instructional concepts in a limited amount of time. So I think Marzano made lots of great points, and if we change everything like his steps were, is it a guarantee, though, that we are going to feel like we've gotten exactly where we want to curriculum-wise in the American education system? I am unsure there, but time will certainly tell. So lastly, I've been thinking this for a while, and several of the texts I've read in this T2T program and Marzano's text, my big question to everybody is, why are we not modeling our curriculum or education style off of other countries who are outperforming us? Seems like they've got better systems. I don't know if it's just the American spirit that we don't want to conform quite yet, or what exactly. I don't have a lot of answers there, but I really thought that everything was like, this was just a really great time for me to read all of this, and I will leave it off at there. I wanted to keep this kind of under 15 minutes, so hopefully I did all right. Lastly, here's my resource slide. So I will link my video, but I'll also link this slides presentation in my post too if anybody wants to go back and read it more in depth. But looking forward to any of your comments and responses and everybody else's thoughts on our module this week. With that, have a great weekend.